Okay, like Archana ma'am has already stated that I will be discussing on the geographical thought. So before we get into our discussions today, we should keep in mind that about the Greek civilizations. Why Greek civilization is very important, and why as a geographer we need to discuss Greek and Romans scholars' contribution towards the growth of geography as a subject. The Greek civilizations is a period of a political, philosophical, artistic, and scientific achievement that has formed a legacy with unparalleled influence on the Western civilizations. The entire Western civilizations has a legacy of these Greek civilizations. So this Greek civilization, if you look at the entire subjects that has been taught in the school today, or in the universities, we will find that the entire subject has its foundations in the Greek civilizations. So Greek civilizations, uh, so it is very important for a geography scholars like you and me, we are all scholars, to understand the contribution of the Greek. But one thing we should keep in mind that is that these Greek scholars are not geographers. Many of the Greek scholars are not the geographers. They are philosophers, and they have contributed to the growth of many disciplines in the universities and the schools that and the subject that we studies in the universities and schools. But why we should study them? Why we should study the contribution of the Greeks? Because see, if you look at the geographical subject today, geography has two branches, two main branches. One is human geography, the other one is physical geography. And in human geography, the entire human geography has, borrowed from other disciplines. Like we have a political geography, we have a social and cultural geography, we have populations geography, we have settlement geography, we have economy geography. So, if you look at this Roman and Greek scholars' contribution, you will find somewhere that, these scholars have done some research, have contributed in economy, in settlement geography, in population growth, or in social or culture. Like in the physical geography, if you look at the branches of physical geography, we will see that a climatology is there, right? A climatology. We see that there is a geomorphology, there is a hydrology, there is a soil geography. So entire branches. Somewhere, the grid has its contributions. So therefore, we should always keep in mind that that the Greek scholar, many of the Greek scholars are not geographers, but their contributions is very important towards the growth of geography as subjects. So, today we will be discussing, I will just give a lecture on this Greek and Roman scholars, which is also a part of your BSc or BA syllabus, and also your MSc or MS syllabus. You have already studied these things in your universities and schools. So, first of all, let us start with the contribution of the Greeks towards the growth of geography. Geography as a field of knowledge had its root, as I've said earlier, in the Greek scholarships. This is not surprising, as in the ancient times, Greek was one of the well-flourishing civilizations dating back to 500 BC to 200 BC, with its central in Greece and its surrounding area. Look at this map and visualize. Now we have to analyze, as a scholars, we have to analyze these things. This is the ancient Greek, the map that is there in the screen is an ancient Greek civilization, or the colonies of the ancient Greek. Now, as a scholar, we have to analyze these things and see with this map and present it in the present situations and see that how is this civilization has its legacy on the present, present centuries. So, the Greek period is rightly called the golden period. Why? Because, Greek has provided a framework, the concept that guided the Western thinkings for many centuries. So if you look at today, even in the present context, you will find somewhere the philosophical, influence of the Greek. The entire Greek philosophy, if you read and if you look at the present context also, you will find that there is some influence of the Greek contributions. Ancient Greece is the birthplace of Western philosophy. Right? People like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. These are well-known names. There are many names and numbers, of the Greeks in the field of philosophy. But these are some great names like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. In the literature, in the field of literature, we have Homer or Hesiod. In the field of mathematics, we have Pythagoras or Euclid. In the field of history, we have Herodotus. So this entire, this entire people, these peoples have still, their thinkings have still have a very good relevance in the present context. Look at the Western philosophy, like the philosophy. We talk even today. We take the reference of Socrates. We take the reference of Plato. We take the reference of Aristotle. Henani. If you look at the philosophical branch, even today in the universities, maybe ye पढ़ा रहा है Socrates का कहानी पढ़ा रहा है, Socrates का philosophy पढ़ा रहा है, Socrates Plato का पढ़ा रहा है, Aristotle का पढ़ा रहा है. It's still very relevant even in the present context. So like even in the literature and mathematics also, it has much relevance. So in the field of the history also, if there is any history students, you will come across, there are many things to deal with Herodotus, because Herodotus is considered as the father of history. See, the important thing about today's world, that is the Olympic Games and democracy. This democracy we talk about in our country today has its origins, its root in the Greek civilizations. Today we talk about the Olympic game. It has its origins in ancient Greece. So this is the reason why the Greek period. This is the reason why the Greek civilization is considered as a golden period. And coming next to the, in the field of science, even during those days, in the ancient days, the scholars like Democritus and Lysippus, they was talking about the atomic universe. Think about it, in the ancient Greece, they were talking about the atomic universe. The concepts like atomic universe was first posted in the Greeks through the word of this Democritus and the Lysippus. So even in the present generation, we have there are some we don't have the capacity to think about the atomic universe, but the people in the Greek civilization has started long time back. And when it comes to the Latin alphabet, also comes from the ancient Greeks, having been introduced in the region during the Phoenicians colonizations in the 8th century BCE. The earlier work in physics and engineering was pioneered by the Archimedes of the Greek colony of Syracuse, among others, physics and engineering. So, the question arises, why is Greeks or these Greek people in the Greek civilization so scholarly? Or why is, their influence even to our, to the present context so large? Why they were so scholarly? The question arises, did they get idea from others? Now the question is whether the entire ideas comes from the Greek alone, or they borrowed some ideas from the neighboring civilizations. So the question is, did they get ideas from others? Yes, they do get ideas from other civilizations. Because remember that when the Greek civilization was going on, at the same time, there were some other civilization that is going on at the same time. So yes, they do get ideas from other civilizations. So the root of ancient Greek scholarships are found in the observations, measurement, and generalizations of the scholars in Egypt. The cradles of civilizations. The Egyptians have developed ways of measuring lengths in order to collect text. This led to the identification of south, north, and south lines. The art of writing. So the art of writing also comes from the ancient Greek. Remember that ancient Egyptians. Remember that Greek were the entire documents, the entire research were been already written. So, but this art of writing also comes. They borrowed the idea from the ancient Egyptians. Egyptians writing is known as a hieroglyphics and developed at some point prior to the earlier dynastic period. So papyrus was used as a writing material as early as 3000 BC in the ancient Greek and continued to be used to some extent until around 1100 AD. So these were used to write their research or to make the documents. So papyrus from which we get modern word paper. So the word paper comes from this papyrus and it's the writing materials made of the papyrus plant, which grows in the marshy areas around the Nile River. Here comes, the Greek also has borrowed some ideas from the Mesopotamians. The, the Mesopotamians are credited for inventing the mathematics, and the Greek has borrowed the mathematics idea from the Mesopotamians. Earlier mathematics was essentially a form of counting and was used to count things like sheep, crop, and exchange good. These were of Mesopotamians. So later on, it was used to solve more sophisticated problems like related to irrigations and perhaps architectures. By the late Babylon period, these mathematics were used to solve a complicated astrological and geometrical problems. So, the Mesopotamians, people in Mesopotamia invented mathematics. They first used it for counting of ships in a very easy way. And later on, it changes to, the counting of irrigations, or it has been used in architectures. And later on, it was used to solve the complicated issues like astrological and geometrical problems. So Greek also borrow from the Mesopotamians and Sumerians. They borrowed the basic principles of algebra from them. The sexagesimal systems was also taken, which believe that there are 360 days in a year, almost accurate. The Sumerians were the peoples who live in the south of Mesopotamia, whose civilization flourished between 4100 to 1750 BCE. So, the civilization were going hand in hand. At the same time, when the Mesopotamian civilization was going on, the Sumerian civilization was also going on hand in hand. So the Sumerians were responsible for many important innovations in inventions. So what did the Greek borrow from them? They essentially invented time by dividing day and night into 12 hours, into 60 minutes, and minutes into 60 seconds. See, these are something which we always ignore, but remember that this has happened in the ancient days. The Sumerians has already come out with this beautiful inventions to divide the whole day, like day and night, the 12 hours, 60 minutes, and 60 minutes into a second. So these are important, very important for all of us as a scholars to once again retrospect on how geography has grown. Now you are a scholar, so now it is very important for us to know, how these ancients really work hard to make these things even relevant even today. So the Sumerians divided the year into 12 months, each month with 30 days. Even the idea that a circle has 360 degrees from these scholarships. They have divided the circles of the zoidid into 360 parts. Okay. Okay, what about the Phoenicians? Who are the Phoenicians? The Phoenicians you can see in the map here. In the right side of this screen, you can see the Phoenicians map. This is an ancient map. These Phoenicians are the modern Lebanon. This is the map of the Lebanon map now. See, they were so good in marine. That is why in the ancient days they were considered as the master of mariners. So what make them a master of mariner? See, driven by the desire for trade and acquisition of of such commodities like silver from Spain, gold from Africa, and tin from the Sicily Islands, the Phoenicians sailed far wide, even beyond the Mediterranean traditional safe limits of the Pillar of the Hercules and into the Atlantic Oceans. Now here we have to see one thing, why they were considered as the master of the mariner. See, during those days, people are afraid to go beyond the Mediterranean traditional safe limit. Why? Because people think that beyond this Mediterranean Sea, there is an end, and there lies a pillar, of the Hercules. So people doesn't, sailed, normally doesn't sailed beyond the traditional Mediterranean traditional safe limit. But these people, driven with this uh, desire to, trade with Spanish, Africans, and Sicily Islands, they have gone to this far. They were credited with many important nautical inventions and firmly established a reputation as the greatest mariner in the ancient world. Phoenician ships were represented in the art of their neighbors, and their shipmanship is praised all others by such ancient writers like Homer and Herodotus. So even the Herodotus and the Homer, they were praising the skills of the Phoenicians. The Greeks also came to know about the explorations and navigation from the Phoenicians, the settlers of the modern Lebanon. So now we can see that how do Greeks go beyond the boundary. They learned how to explore. They learned how to navigate from the Phoenicians. These people are not only expertists as explorer and merchants, also invented the world's first phonetic alphabet. We all know what is phonetic alphabet. So this is the contribution of the Phoenicians. So the Greek got an idea of the celestial bodies. The Greek scholar has also contributed a lot towards the celestial bodies. So they got an idea from the Babylonians and Assyrians on the movement and position of the celestial bodies, which give birth to the disciplines like astrology. So by these 3-4 slides, we have come across that Greeks were so scholarly, no doubt, but most of the ideas, most of the knowledge were borrowed from the other civilizations. But why did they flourish? Why not Phoenicians? Why not Mesopotamians? Why not Babylonians? People talk about Greek. Why? Because the Greek has these Greek scholars are very hardworking. All right, they got an idea from the neighboring countries, but they work hard and they put these things into use. And that is why, even today, you can see that how influential are their thinkings, how influential is the philosophy put forward by the Greeks. It is found in every part of the world. So there are two traditions of geography. First is literature and mathematics. These two, three slides you may have already seen that there was, they were talking about astrology, they were talking about the mathematics, they were talking about the explorations and all those things. Now we will see that there are two traditions in geography. One is literature, the other one is mathematics. In the literature, in the literature traditions, we can start with the Homer. Is perhaps the greatest of all epics, poet, and his legendary status was well established by the time of classical Athens. He composed. See, remember that these Homer's writings like Odyssey and Iliad are not written by Homer. It was someone who has written, he composed, not wrote, since the poem was created and transmitted orally. So, the entire poems, the entire, idea was just orally transmitted down. They were not written down until much later. This long epic poem describes the episode of the Trojan's War and certain valuable informations about the geographical, historical geographical of the then known world. The entire this poem you may have already uh, come across in your lifetime because these are very famous ones. He was narrating about the Trojan War, right? He was talking about the Trojan War, and some some geographical phenomena has taken place. So in the poem, he has described four winds coming from different directions and named them Boris as north, Irus as east, Notus as south, and Cyprus as west. So these are the four winds he have described in his poem. The Greek geographers had themselves referred Homer as the father of geography. So now we should not be confused that the Homer is the father of geography. This uh, Homer as a father of geography was just named by the Greek geographers, not by the entire geographers. The Thales, another important geographer, or not a geographer, scholars who has contributed a lot towards the growth of geography is Thales of Miletus. Miletus is a place in the Greece and a very scholarly town during those days. So traditionally regarded as the first Western philosopher and mathematicians, Thales of Miletus, a Greek colony on the west coast of the present-day Turkey, lived 558 BCE. This is the map of the ancient Greece of 750 BCE, and you can see that in the circle, the Miletus. He accurately predicted the solar eclipse of May 28, 585 BCE, and was known as the skilled astronomer, geometer, and statesman and sage. Thales, it is said, was the first to ask the questions like, what is the basic stuff of the universe? Here, this comes the ideas of physics. Here, this is the physics stuff of the universe. And according to Aristotle, claimed the first causes was water because, among other attributes, water could change shapes and move while still remaining unchanged in substance. So, that is an explanation of the Thales. Thales pictures the Earth as a flat disk that floated on an infinite oceans, perhaps motivated by observation that wood and other substance float on the water. Remember that they are great scholars, but they also do some mistake, isn't it? Thales have said that the Earth as a flat disk. He was also the first who started the measurement of the Earth and locations of things on the face of the Earth, and thus established